Okay, so today we're going to be shooting mostly in the studio, but I want to go over a couple of things first. Um, so last week when we got into the whole lighting issue and all of that kind of stuff, is everybody feeling a little bit more comfortable about that? For me, I think the most challenging part of that whole experience is fall off. You know, just that whole principle, inverse square law, light and fall off. You know, it's a challenge. But if you imagine when you guys were doing your the background where you're trying to make the background white, gray, and then black, and we kept talking about the separation between figure and background. If you could really get them far enough apart from one another, then you really could independently control them. You could do lighting for the background, lighting for the figure, right? But also imagine if you got your figure light, your subject light, extremely close to your subject, then the fall off would actually keep the background from being lit by your subject light. Does that make sense? So again, we were doing a lot of people, we did spot grids to actually control the spill of that subject light. But again, just bring that in extremely close. Now, there's ramifications from that, obviously, right? The light, as you move it in closer, is more contrasty or less contrasty? Less contrasty, why? There's more wrap, right? The closer you move it in, the bigger it becomes, relatively speaking, right? I mean, the reflector's the size of the reflector, but distance has a direct impact on the relative size of an object. We all know that. Remember, the sun is not the size of your hand, but it sure looks that way when you walk outside right now and look up in the sky. It's about the size of your hand, right? But it's gigantic, but it's so far away, it appears small. So just those are the ways that you need to be thinking about this stuff. So once we get through that part, then we need to actually start talking about how you really decipher lighting. One of the things that happens in virtually every photo shoot that I work on is that you will get concept boards from clients, and they'll say, this is what we have in mind. And I can tell you this right now, as a photographer, as an assistant, as a digital, whatever role you take in this, but especially as you start planning your career as a photographer, if somebody gives you a tear sheet and says, this is the lighting that I like, you damn well better do that lighting. It's that simple, right? If you can't do it, that's not going to look well. So the part that I want to talk to about today, the reason I ask you guys to bring in tear sheets is and actually if you've looked through our Canvas site, I updated our assignment. It basically ends up being the exact same work. It's just worded a little bit differently, and I put a spin on it. So, but you'll see. We'll go through it all before we get out into the studio. But at any rate, at this stage, I just want to show you the steps that I go to, the things that I do when somebody hands me something like that. And so that's what we're going to do here really quickly. Then we're also going to do a little conversation about lighting diagrams, and then color temperature metering. So we're going to go through all of that first, and then we will get into the studio, and you guys will actually be shooting today. So this is typically what somebody will hand me, and depending on how good it is, most of you, I asked you to bring in tear sheets. Most of you actually probably had to print something out, because I doubt, how many of you guys still look at magazines? How many do you still get magazines? Do you get them physically delivered? I love that. You just like, I love print. That's what can I tell you. So anyway, but that's kind of where. So, but ultimately, what I'm going to suggest that you do is, if you can get an electronic version of it, that's what's going to function the best for you when you try to get into these situations where you are trying to figure lighting out and you're trying to recreate stuff that comes on a concept board or a tear sheet. So I'm going to show you my process right now, and then we will move on. Okay, so this is what I would typically get, and I can't believe that this one actually worked, but it does. So this is an image. I don't know. I don't remember. I've had this forever. I do the same sort of lecture. I've done it for a while here, but it doesn't even. It doesn't. It's like a scan of an image or something. I mean, I don't even know what it is. The thing that I'm going to show you though, how many of you actually use Google Images to search by image? Okay, it gets tricky. Some of the time you can actually have a scan. You can take a picture of another picture with your phone and do that, but it's really a lot trickier. It's not as solid as if you have an original electronic version of it. So I'm going to show you exactly what that means. So anyway, so this is the image I'm going to try to figure out. This is the lighting that I'm going to try to decipher. So the first thing I'm going to do though is I'm going to see if I can't find something better than that, because this is really, really, really challenging. I can't really see what's going on in her eyes. That's the first thing that I actually always look for. Why? Go for it. Catch lights are definitely a clue. What else? Say what? If you can get in close enough, eyeballs are mirrors. They will show you exactly what is in front of that figure, but you need to be able to get in really, really, really close, right? So yeah, that's why. So anyway, that's how I'm going to go about doing this. So to do it, I'm going to jump online really quickly. I'm going to do a new, and I'm just going to click images. Now, I use Chrome, so Google puts this up here for me. But if you don't have it, if you're using a different browser, just do a search for Google Images. It's actually, it looks similar to this splash page right here. You can also click on this little guy right here. I'm sure it's the same thing. It is the search by image, but I've always gone here, so I'm just going to continue to go there. I'm going to click on this little thing, and you have options here. If you have a link to an image anywhere online, you can paste the link in here and it will search for the image. Otherwise, you can either drag an image onto this or upload one. So I'm going to actually upload that image, and it's this one right here. And I'm going to click open. And they change this over and over and over again, the whole interface of this. This is the current version of it. But at any rate, I'm going to click on exact matches because that's really all I'm interested in. And you can see right off the bat, I end up getting, Pinterest is one of the worst things that can happen to you in this, because you can never get an image off of Pinterest. And people also have Pinterest boards that go on for like 100,000 images, and you'll never find it. But things like this matter. Like this is, again, they found it, and this is actually the model's name. So if I can't find the image itself, I'll look for the model's name. I'll do all sorts of things like that. But anyway, I'm going to go back to my exact matches. And you can see there's a whole list of these things. Oh, okay, here's this girl. What I end up looking for is this resolution. This is the size of the image that you're looking for, and I want the biggest one that I can find. Now, older versions of this allowed you to actually sort this by size. This is a brand new interface for me. Again, they change this thing like every 3 months, it seems like. So, but anyway, this so far is the biggest one that I see. So I'm going to scroll down here and see if there's anything else in here that's actually bigger. A lot of stuff that's smaller, but also this Sunday style stuff. Those matter because I'm not only looking for this image, I'm looking for anything that goes along with it. So it looks like that's going to be the biggest size image, the 1200 image. So that's the one I'm actually going to go for. It's this guy right here. I'm going to click on this. It'll open up this part right here, and here is the image. And as I scroll down here, I think, okay, score, because I've not only got that image, I've actually got, this was a whole story campaign that was actually done. So I've got, this is actually the most close-up version that I've got, so I can zip in and take a quick look at those guys. This is the image right here, and a lot of times what I'll do here is, if you hover over this is in a Macintosh, it's same thing, it's going to be a right-click in Windows, but so in Macintosh for me, I don't do the double finger swipe down, I do a control click, and you want to open this image in a new tab. It's easier to get the full res version if you do it this way. So I'm going to click on this, and this is the image right here, and you can see how much bigger it is and how much better quality it is and how much more I can see than the one that I actually had. So then I would download this image. So control click to actually save this image. And again, this is where, and I'll put it back into my folder along with all the other images here, and then we're off to the races. So I don't need to actually do that anymore because I've already downloaded all of this. So in doing that, these are the images that I've actually got, and you can sort of see, I'm going to step through these really quickly. So I can see that there's a window on the left-hand side. I can see, again, what time of day is this? Yeah, it's late afternoon, right? I mean, that's always a loaded question, right? Because 5 o'clock in the dead of winter, it's jet black outside, it's nighttime. But 5 o'clock in the summertime, the sun's still really high up in the sky, right? So, but let's just call this late afternoon, late-ish afternoon, right? So, but I'm going to continue to look through these, and this part is somewhat similar here. So I'm liking this part again. I'm getting some sort of information from this. This one, though, I actually am going to open up and see. Now, the version that I just saw online actually may be a higher res version than this one. We'll see. So I'm going to come back to this in a second and just see. That's the one I'm actually looking for. Oh, look at this. This was actually the set. This actually came from part of the story that was about this. So does that mean that this is truly available light in that room? Why do you suspect that it's not true available light? Go for it.
I mean, like, there's a lot of images there, and I just know the time it would take to go through all of those outfits would be like.
You're absolutely right. Nope, you just nailed it right on the head. The shadows don't move that much in all of this, right? So the shadows here, if we take a look at this, it's not that different than this. It's not that different than this. You know, they're all very, very, very consistent. And there's no way in the course of, I mean, for her to get out of that, for them to shoot it, her to get out of this outfit, another one on, hair change, get back in here, whatever, the sun is going to continue to drop lower in the sky. Or if it could be actually, this could be morning. It could be actually the flip side. You have to realize that sunrise actually functions as the inverse of sunset. So these could be pictures done very early in the morning. But at any rate, there's too much consistency of the shadow in here for it to be available light. So how then do you do this? Go for it.
Go through one of the windows on the side and actually set out the light to create it.
That's exactly how you do it. So if you're lucky, if you're in this kind of situation, if you're on the ground floor, you don't need to worry about it. You just go outside and you set lights up on the ground floor. That's not an issue. But if you're up higher in a building, what you're hoping for is that there are two windows. You're hoping there's a window on the left of this that we can't really see. You take the longest boom that you can possibly do and you stick a bare head outside to actually function as the sun. You also hope that those windows are north facing. So if you have the option in a building, because you don't want to be competing with the real sun in case it actually becomes a player. So if it's a north facing window, you're never going to get direct sunlight in there. So does that sort of make sense in this? So I'm making all of these calculations as I go along, Aaron. If you didn't have a second window, I stick it out this window as far as I can. I would still boom it out. It starts to just get a little crowded in there is the only reason I wouldn't try it right off the bat. But yeah, anything to get it out. Also, if you're in a house, you can a lot of times you can actually, if there's an upstairs that's got a window, you can actually drop it down out of the upstairs window part. You'll see when film crews do this, they have they have those like roller stands, but like massive ones that actually they're hydraulically powered and they go up. I mean, they're like cranes. They go up. Some people actually use literally the signs that, the cherry picker basket things that people use to work on, lights and hang signs with and all that kind of stuff. They'll rig lights up on that stuff and take that up. So, there's a million ways of doing this. It's just, yeah.
Would it look like this?
That's exactly what it would look like.
That's so cool.
Yeah, no, it works out really well. So anyway, so now that we've actually got the image, I've started Capture One session. So this is my Capture One session for today. And what I do is I come into Capture One. So this is where I'm going to do my lighting test. I come into Capture One, I click on the library, and then I want to right click on this capture folder to get the drop down menu and say, can you show me this folder in the Finder? And let go. And this is where it is. So then I'm going to, again, I've talked to you guys repeatedly about copying from top to bottom. So I want to bring a copy of the image that I'm trying to copy into my capture folder. So to do that, I'm going to hide everybody else. I'm going to grab this image. So it's this one. Let me see which one it is. Yeah, it's this one right here. I'm going to simply copy this into my capture folder. hold down the Option key to make a copy of it because I don't want to move it out of here. So this way I can just leave it in there. Then when I go back into Capture One, and click on my capture folder, it's sitting right here. So if I double click on this, this is where the image actually is. Now, as I start to add images to this, this one's going to go away. I don't want this one to go away. I want to be able to compare this to whatever I'm trying to do in the studio. So I'll go into the studio and start to set stuff up, and I'll shoot the first picture. But I don't want this one to go away. I want to be able to see them side by side. So to do that, you come up to the Image menu, down to Set as Compare Variant. You can also right-click on this. So again, it's a right-click or a two-finger swipe, whatever. Control-click on this. On the thumbnail. Again, click on this drop-down menu and say Set as Compare Variant. And you'll notice that it puts an orange line around it with a little pin in it. And I'm going to leave this here so when we actually go into the studio and start shooting, you'll see that this image never leaves. Every other image that we shoot is going to come up right next to this one. So I'm constantly have something to compare. Now, once you get the image, so you get the way it's supposed to be, the way you want this to actually be, then to to have it stop being the compare variant, again, you would control click on the thumbnail as well, and you can say clear selected compare variant, and it will go away. You can also do the same thing up here on the image. So again, set as compare, and then once it is the compare variant, well, we'll go ahead and set it again, and then you'll see here you have the option to clear this. So why is this important to me? Well, all this information. So I can actually take a look at the highlight on her cheek. And you remember I said to you guys before, didn't we talk about Caucasian R value, right? And didn't I say 225 to 245? So this is extremely bright. This is pushing things to be bright. So I know that the exposure is correct on this, and I don't have a color card or anything in here, but I'm looking at that R value, it's a 241. So I know where that is. But look at this. I can also measure what my shadow detail is. Or not my detail, but the level of my shadow. How dark is my shadow? How light is my shadow? So I can actually go in and say, okay, well, the shadow in the swipe that I'm trying to recreate is reading 146 on this background. That's the luminosity. So I can go into the studio. So typically what will happen in a situation like this is you'll have a single light that's on the outside coming in. It'll be very, very, very contrasty. These shadows on here will be almost black. So then what you do is we need to actually lift all of that shadow part, but you can't bring in another light, say like on the other side, your typical fill light situation that you guys have all learned in lighting 1 and 2. Because that second fill light, actually, if it's strong enough, will create competing shadows. You're going to get a shadow coming back from the right-hand side for that. So you basically need to create a shadowless lighting. How would you do that, Liam?
Really big softbox and turn it to low so it lights everything up the same.
And where would you put it?
In front of everything.
In front of.
Say if you're lighting that whole situation later, or do you want one side versus the other? You put it right in front of.
But see, again, I'm thinking if you put it to a side, you've introduced a second light source. It's going to introduce a second set of shadows. So I want a shadowless light. A shadowless light. That should be a big hint, Aaron.
I was gonna say just put like a fill card to reflect the light that's on.
A fill card would be better than another light source, but you guys are not quite getting the point, so I'm going to show you what you would do.
Could you use like a silk screen?
A scrim, you mean?
Yes.
You could. On what?
Like in front of the light to soften the shadow.
But if I put it to soften the shadows, it ruins the crispness of the shadow. I'm just trying to make it lighter, not trying to eliminate it. Yes.
Set up a light with a lot of wraps, and then you can go and
I'm just going to show you. Yeah, I'm just going to show you. Pardon my drawing skills. I never do this this is why I do this always on a whiteboard. I say that. Not that my drawing skills on a whiteboard are any better. All right, so we are looking top down. So here is the wall with the window. Here is the wall with the figure. Here is the figure. And there's shadows on these walls. Here is the camera. And again, I've got my one single light that's out here that's coming in and casting those shadows. So the shadows are really, really, really super dark. You guys can imagine this, right? So I just want to lift them. So I take a really big light source right behind my camera, because the shadows, all lights will create shadows, but the shadow that this thing creates will be on the wall directly behind her. You'll never see it. And then it's just a question of how much power you put through this thing. So typically I'll start in an extremely low power rating on this and just see, did I lift the shadows to the point that I wanted to? And if not, I start cranking this thing up. And you can bring it all the way up to the point that you get extremely faint light shadows. Does that sort of make sense? We good on this part? Okay. So then the other thing I said that I wanted to do in here, just to make sure I have some idea of what's going on in this image, is there was one of these images here that I felt like I could see in much closer, and it is this one. So I'm going to try to open this one up in Photoshop. Yeah, and these aren't high-res images, but I can get sort of an image, something going on in here. So right off the bat, I know that exactly what I just told you I would do is exactly what is going on in here. You can see that catch light in her eye that's almost right in the very dead center of her eye. That is a light that is directly behind the camera. So then I cannot see where the second light is, the main light on her. It's too far out to the side. You can sort of see that in the corner of her eye right here, that actually might be the catch light from the key light that's actually sitting outside the window. But that's how I know exactly what's going on in here. Make sense? Okay, so we've got that part going for us. So, sorry, the other thing that I will do in this, let me open that guy back up again. The other thing that I'll do in this is that, again, I'm thinking now about lighting and direction and all of that. So this is a relatively hard light. Again, I've got really hard to find lines in here. So if we take a look at the image I'm really trying to knock off, they're relatively sharp lines in here. That indicates to me a very contrasty light. So the light that's outside my window, that I'm putting outside my window, is what kind of light? Say what? Direct, yeah, but what does that really mean? What modifier are you using? What sort of head are you using? What's out there? Is it an umbrella? Is it a softbox? Is it a bare head? Is it, what's out there? I'm sorry? Big reflector, little reflector, small reflector. Again, all of those are making those light sources bigger. Aren't you guys trying to get really sharp edges on this? Isn't that a really contrasty light? Again, we're filling the shadows here, so don't get all caught up in the fact that it's, you can't lose the sight of the fact that these are really, really sharp edges here. And the minute you start getting a larger and larger and larger modifier on here, you start introducing wrap, and those edges start getting softer and softer and softer to the point that they go away, right?
So like a small, like just head?
The smallest thing I can get out there, I would do a bare head with no reflector at all. That's what I would do. That's where I would, certainly where I would start. And then I would, again, have a really big softbox behind my camera, directly behind my camera, to actually lift those shadows to wherever I needed them. Sort of make sense? So again, in trying to decipher all of this stuff, what you're looking for is you're thinking about direction, you're thinking about trying to see catch lights. Again, if I could really zoom in, there was some beauty stuff that they'd shot of her and I had high-res versions of this, you can actually spot the camera that's in, you can see the whole set in her eyes. Again, eyes function just like mirrors. And so you can see, oh yeah, there's another fill light on the floor there that's doing something. All of that kind of stuff. Does that sort of make sense to everyone? I can also look at the values here on her clothes. So I'm just reading over here. So that's a black outfit. I'm reading in the mid-20s, which is, this is exactly where I would peg this. because that's where I know shadow detail actually needs to be. If you start getting your shadow details, even though you can see it on screen, you will never be able to print it if you get really much darker than the mid-20s for that. So, and again, I can zoom around all of this. I'm looking at the highlight on her face to judge exposure. I'm looking at the shadow detail on her skirt to know where that's set. I can then measure the amount of fill that's actually on the shadows on the wall. You can even then, not that it's really easy, you can't really measure color per se on this, but you can visually do it. So again, if you're shooting digital, the images that are going to be coming into this, you can warm them up or cool them down so that the skin tones basically begin to match that, and you're off to the races. You can get frighteningly close to this and do it really quickly. Make sense? Okay, so research is your first game. Every bit of it all, right? Get online, get the biggest res of anything you can get, and then if there's any, so in this case again, obviously I do fashion, and you usually have fashion stories, so you'll have a lot of this. I'm lucky in that I'll have other images around it, but even if I didn't have anything else around this, I would be able to glean so much from this, and I think I would be in good shape. Questions about any of this? Okie dokie. So the other thing that you're going to do today is we are going to do lighting diagrams. So I want to show you exactly how to do them. So if you would take a look at our website, in our website here, so this is what it's not really changed a lot, but I've upgraded it, I renamed it a little bit. So what we're going to be doing today is playing the swipe recreation game. Anyway, this is what I was talking about here. From this point on in this class, everything that you do in the studio, every lighting situation that you do in the studio, I'm going to ask you to do a diagram of your lighting setup. This is something that you guys, it's a library that you should start building for yourself and keeping for yourself. I have got books and books and books of lighting diagrams. My entire career has been diagrammed out. Everyone does this. If you go to the Art Institute and ask them to see the Irving Penn collection, you guys as students, I think, actually have greater access than somebody who just walks off the street. But a huge part of his collection, his personal collection of his work, is stored at the Art Institute. Nobody knows why he gave it to them, or I certainly don't. But anyway, if you look at it, there's actually lighting diagrams. They're the charts that he used in his studio to track exposure values and to track how stuff was processed and to do clip tests and to do quick little diagrams. But it's really interesting stuff to actually see. But at any rate, I'm going to show you how I think you should do these things. So if we go back into Photoshop, so anyway, if you click on this link right here, you'll see that there is a lighting setup icon right here. It's just a very small Photoshop file. You can download it just by clicking on this. Also, if you go back to the resources also for session 8, the very same file is right. That's Teams. It's not what I wanted.
Wait, what was the name of the photographer?
Irving Penn.
Oh.
Sorry, the resources for session 8, the very same thing is not here. It's going to be maybe in session 7 resources, because we should have gotten to this last week, but we didn't. But again, every time the assignment is there, there'll be a link. Yeah, it's this thing right here. There's also another place that you can do this. I'm going to show you how I do it, because I do it in Photoshop using this file right here. You can also, this is a website that you can go to that'll allow you to actually diagram stuff out on your website. So this is a little bit more complicated for me to use, so I don't use this. I use the one in Photoshop. But this is what you're trying to do. You are trying to create a document that you could hand off to a complete stranger, and they could actually duplicate your set exactly. So it needs to have all of the information. It needs to have all of the lighting. It needs to have all of the camera settings. It needs distances of subject to background, so lights to subject. It needs to know what the power on the power packs are. It needs to know what the color of seamless is. It needs to know everything that you can possibly think of to be added to this. So that's what I'm going to ask for and what I'm going to expect. So if we go back to the thing I just told you about, again, in the assignment, every time I'm asking for a diagram, there'll be a download link to that file. But you should just download it and keep it and use it for the whole rest of your life. So anyway, in Photoshop, I can get rid of this. And this is what it looks like right here. So you can see when you open it up, it's very sort of like plain. I'm going to double click on this hand right here really quickly just to get it big here. So this is basically what it looks like. Now you'll notice that this is a grayscale image. It says gray right here. I don't want you to keep this in grayscale. Your very first move in this is to turn this into a color a version of this. And the reason I do that is you should then, once you do your chart, you should also add an image from your shoot so that you know what the hell shooting it is that that this whole lighting diagram is about. The lighting diagram by itself is no use to you because you don't have any idea what the light looks like. So anyway, that's how I'm going to do it. I'll show you examples of that in just a second. So what I do, the very first move I would make on this is go up to the image menu to mode and just make this an RGB color image. And that way you can add either a black and white tear sheet to this or whatever you're shooting in the studio. It's going to ask you if you want to merge all this stuff. You don't. These are all the modifiers that you want to work with right here. So I'm going to say do not merge. And you'll see now it's got an RGB at the top, meaning it is an RGB image. So now when I bring in a sample of my color photograph from the studio that I'm diagramming, it's not going to turn it into a grayscale. It will keep it as color. So it's just a simple thing. I should never have sent this out as a grayscale one, but it is what it is. So anyway, does that make sense to everybody what's going on here? So then this is the next most important thing. I'm just going to tell you this is the easiest way to do this. You do not want to work directly on this. You actually want to make a copy of this. And the reason I say you don't want to work on this directly is that this set of modifiers over here gets incredibly confusing to work with. So instead, what I do, now I use the older version of the new dialog box for this very reason. If you come up into Photoshop, but you can find out the dimensions of this. But if you come up, if you come up to the File menu and you say, I want to do New, which is Command N, this is the older dialog box. If you prefer to use this older dialog box, you can actually set this up in Settings. I will show you where this is. So in Photoshop Settings, if we come over to General, in General, it says right here, use Legacy New Document Interface. It's infinitely superior to the new one that they've actually created here. So anyway, this is the Legacy one. So anyway, say okay to that, Command N, we'll bring it back up again. And then in this drop-down menu, you can actually pick anything that's open on this image. And you can see right here, these are all the files that I've got open. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, I've got 5 files that are open right here. But the one that we want to copy the exact dimensions of is this lighting setup icon. And it will populate this now with exactly the same dimensions. And if you say okay, then this is a blank version of this. They are exactly the same size. So when I drag from one to the other, it will allow me, it'll all come in perfect register. So then I can go back to this, and the first thing I'm going to do is open up backdrops. So you'll see in backdrops you can do tabletops, you can do a 9-foot seamless or a 12-foot seamless, or a white pinup board. You've got all of those options going for you. I'm going to do a 9-foot seamless because that's typically what we work with here in the studio. So then you simply click and you drag this over to the other image, the new one that we're making. You hold down your Shift key because that will bring it in an exact register and let go. And so this is how you do the process. Then I'm going to go back to this image right here, and I'm also going to do I want a location grid on this. So this is the grid. I'm going to click and drag it over, hold down the option key, the shift key, and let go. This actually puts 1 foot markings on the floor. It's another great trick when you're trying to map this stuff out, that you can actually, if you're working in a studio that has tiles in it, most tile that you get these days is 1 foot square. So it's a quick, easy way to measure it out. That's what these are right here. And then you can see you'll continue to work your way up in this. So there is going to be a place that has notes. So you can click and drag a note over here, hold down the shift key, and that's a note that you can write in about what the background color is, blah, 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 all that. Back here, as we come down on all this, you can see that, again, how much easier this gets. So there's cameras in here, there are reflectors in here, so I'll show you a quick strobe one really fast. So this is just a regular strobe head that I'm going to carry over, so what we call a bare bulb. Hold down the shift key and let go, it brings it in. But you can see this is actually pointed sort of right towards the camera. You can actually transform these things. So Command T will bring up the transform dialog box, and you can rotate this thing and then say okay to that, and then hit the V key and move this guy into play. So it has all this kind of portability, accessibility to it. But this is just such a cleaner interface to work with in this. You can see this just gets to be, all of these boxes are open, all of this stuff, it's just, it becomes a lot. So this dragging and dropping is just a safer way to actually do it. It's a more manageable way to do it. And they have everything in here. They've got gobos and reflectors and diffusion panels and umbrellas and beauty dishes and soft boxes. They've got model. If you would prefer not to use the ball, let me see what else they've got in here. Oh, they've got a subject in here. I don't know what the subject is, but we'll see really quickly. It's the ball. Anyway, so you guys get where this is going, right? Okay, so then once you do all of this, I'm going to show you some examples of what they actually look like. So this is one that was done by a student last year, and you can see I've brought in a copy of that was actually on the set. So I know what the lighting is. This is a knockout white background with a hair light that's sitting on the very top. If you turn this off, this is the lighting diagram right here. Now, this has a lot of stuff in here that's important, but it's missing things here as well. Number one, it's missing the fact that this is a white seamless, a 9-footer, and not a 12-footer. You would have that information in there. Or maybe this is a linoleum that got painted white, and if it did, what color white? So all of mine have Benjamin Moore color swatches on it, Benjamin Moore color numbers on anything that got painted. You guys, we haven't talked about that, but this is a great trick for you to know. So definitely write this one down. Nobody in a professional studio uses seamless. Nobody. Seamless is just too hard. It's, you guys know it. You always see the texture in it. You always see the wrinkling in it. You always see, you cross-light seamless, you'll see all of that shadow part, all of that stuff. You need something that's really smooth. So there are two options that you have. Some people have studios that have cyc walls in them. So they're just a wall that has a curve from the floor to the background like a seamless has, but it's made out of drywall. And then it's just completely coated with plaster so that it's smooth, and you can paint it any color that you want. But the poor man version of that, the version that I've used in every single studio that I've ever worked in, is linoleum. And so what you do is you go to, I'm going to show you here really quickly. I'm going to go to Home Depot. And I'm going to do, and it's not only Home Depot. You can get this at Menards, you can get it at Lowe's, you can get it anywhere. So anyway, you can help me find today linoleum floor rolling. And this is the stuff right here. So the advantage of this is when you take a look at this stuff, you don't really care about the pattern on the front. You're just looking for the cheapest part of this that you can get. You can see right here, this is 12 feet wide, and it looks like, looks like wood. You don't care about this. What you care about is that this is only 66 cents a square foot, where these others are twice the price. The trick to linoleum is that you don't care about the front of it. It's the back you care about. The back is actually covered in paper, and it's perfectly smooth. And you can paint it any color that you want. So this is also 12 feet wide. So it's 12 feet wide, like a seamless is 12 feet wide, like a real seamless is 12 feet wide, not the 9 feet you guys keep struggling with, right? So you get the width, but then you can paint it any color you want, and you can paint it over and over. I have had rolls of linoleum that stayed in my studio for 10 years, had 100 coats of paint on it, 1,000 coats of paint on it, didn't matter.
What type of paint do you use, like water-based?
No, that's a great question. Only matte ever, and it's always latex, the least volatile stuff that you can get. It dries the fastest. It won't kill everybody in the studio because it's like oil-based, and and you're using paint thinner and all that kind of. Don't avoid all that. But it's always matte. If you don't use matte, if you use gloss, semi-gloss, any of those things, you'll actually get reflections of your light in it. So you can fake reflections of light on matte seamless, but you can't undo. You can't take it away from. If you get a glossy surface on there, you're going to see it. That's just how it is, right? So at any rate, but remember this trick. It's the back side of this. So then again, if we go back into Photoshop, how long a roll of seamless, and the other thing you care about this is how thick it is. You'll see that this is 5 millimeters thick. This one here is 10 millimeters thick. That means that this one over here weighs twice as much as this one weighs. And again, what you want to get here is, if we go back into Photoshop and I do another quick little version of this, not that one. If you get a roll of seamless, what you typically want to think about is if you've got a figure here, that's my figure. If you've got a figure here that's roughly 6 feet tall, you need at least an 8-foot background behind them if they're really close to it, but you need more if they're off of it. So again, if your figure is out here in the front, you need more. So basically the seamless that I use, you think of it as a 10-foot background with a 10-foot cove and a 10-foot floor. So this is 10 feet by 10 feet by 10 feet. So you want 30 feet of this. And again, a 30-foot linoleum, the 5 millimeter stuff will weigh about 150 pounds. The 10 millimeter stuff will be double that. It's about a 300-pound roll of linoleum. So once you hang it, it's not the end of the world because you're not dragging all the way, but you try to carry a 300-pound roll of linoleum up my old studio on Milwaukee Avenue. I was on 3rd floor walk-up, and you try going up the stairs with that thing, and we had 4 people on it, and it's still a nightmare. So anyway, questions about any of this? Okay, so again, back to the lighting diagram part really quickly here. The part that is missing on this is a lot of distances, but you can see background lights are identical, 6.5 feet away from the model. The power settings on this is the camera settings right here. One of the things that I don't like on this, there's no lens information on this. So if you're using zoom lenses, what zoom did you actually have it at? So if you're using a 24 to 70, is it set to 24? Is it set to 70? Is it set to 58? What is it set to? All of this, again, the notion of this is that you can hand this to someone and say, here, set up my set. And then when all you need to do is walk on the set, it will be done. It will be there. It will be perfect. It'll be all dialed in. It'll be exactly what the picture looks like. So this is one of them in that lighting diagram. I don't need to save that. I'm not going to do my new ones. I don't need to save this. I'll show you the last couple of images that I've got right here. So this is another one right here. So again, this is what the image looked like. If we take this off, this was the setup right here. And you can see the notes right here. Key light was a large softbox. It's 4 feet 9 inches from the subject. There's no angling position on it. It was straight up and down. Power pack was 2,000 watt seconds minus 2 stops. I mean, it pretty much goes through all of it, right? Again, this one's missing dimensions on it. So I am not going to save that. And I got one last one to show you that I thought was open, but it's not. So let me show it to you really quickly because it's one that actually does have the stuff on it I'm asking you to have on it. And you can see here that it's got all the dimensions marked out. Again, it doesn't have the dimension of camera. Well, no, it does, 7.5 feet. So this is more complete in my opinion. Questions about any of this? Yes?
For the notes section, there is need to like write down what camera and what lens we use, like the example here.
So I don't know that it matters that it would be like a Canon camera or a Nikon camera, but this information, but the information that you would definitely want on here is your, everything the way it's set up, right? So you would want to know the lens length. You would want to know your f-stop. You would want to know your shutter speeds. You would want to know all of those things. You would want that all written down. So again, the idea of this is that you could set this up. I mean, imagine this, you're a photographer, you're really lazy, you want to sleep in late, and you just shoot this over to your assistant and say, I want you guys to set that up, I'll see you at noon for lunch. Yeah. Okay.
Wait, can you zoom out real quick so
Sure.
I can take a picture, please?
Okay, sure. Okay, last thing I want to talk about before we go into the studio is we've looked at this briefly, but I want to look at it again. Color temperature. So this is a bigger chart of it that we were talking about. This is going to matter today. So in color temperature chart, we talked about what this really is. Again, what a black body was, and when you started putting energy into it, you get up to a certain color, so a certain glow. So the numbers that matter to you, the numbers that you need to write down right now, there's 3 of them that are really important here. The first number that you need to write down is 2800 degrees Kelvin. That is a typical incandescent bulb that you would have in a typical house. 3200 degrees is the photo light bulb that you would get. So when you're talking about these lights, the Mole Richardson lights that are in here, that kind of stuff, they are slightly cooler, not much, but slightly cooler than the typical bulb that you would get into a house. So that again, it's still considered a tungsten bulb or a tungsten, even if it's quartz, it doesn't matter what type of bulb it really is. It's going to be in that 3200 degrees. There are some special photo bulbs that will be 3400 degrees Kelvin. It'll be all marked on the bulb. And then finally, 2 others that you really should know about. 6500 degrees Kelvin is what is considered to be neutral light or daylight. This would be daylight for a monitor. But a lot of films that you used to get, that all the color films, color transparency that you would get, they were all color balanced by Kodak to be 5500 degrees Kelvin. So 5500 was considered daylight in film. 6500 is considered daylight in digital. So it's just something to remember. We are going to then meter all this stuff. However, the thing to remember about this is that that's somebody's version of what they think that the color that you like. This does not mean that this is the color that you should be using all the time. I preferred my color film much warmer than this. So for me, my actual daylight reading was 4200 degrees Kelvin. If you know Albert Watson, he would set his at 3800 degrees Kelvin. Using daylight film, he would warm it up that much. It's incredibly warm. So at any rate, just realize that this is not ironclad rules, but this is going to have implications, and I'm going to show you what those implications are in the studio right now, and then you guys are going to start. Before we actually do that, we actually need to figure out what you guys are going to be shooting. So I'm going to pause. Are there any questions about this? 2800 degrees Kelvin is tungsten incandescent bulb in a typical house. 3200 is photo bulb. The studio stuff, the hot lights that we have here in the studio are 3200. There are specialized photo bulbs. You'll see they actually look almost a little bit blue. They're at 3400 degrees Kelvin. And then again, for in a digital world, a monitor, daylight now that we're talking about, would be 6500 degrees Kelvin. But most people would say that if you were to walk outside right now and measure, I don't know what the weather's doing out right now, but a typical day that you would go outside, you would get a reading of closer to 5500. Kodak balanced all of its color films to all its daylight. So again, in color negative film, you assign the color when you go to print it, so it doesn't change. But in transparency film, they had two different kinds of film. They had tungsten film and daylight film, and this is what the two different ones would be. The tungsten version of Kodak would be balanced at 2800 degrees Kelvin. The daylight version of transparency film per Kodak would be 5500, and it's not just Kodak. Everybody, all the filmmakers use the exact same numbers. So Fuji Chrome was 5500, the daylight version. The tungsten version would be 2800 degrees Kelvin, blah, 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 blah. Make sense? Questions about any more of this?
You said 4200 is what you're trying to do?
No, that's what I liked. That was just my preference. But considerably warmer than this. I mean, it's half of this, right? All right. I'm going to show you how to deal with metering color here in just a second anyway. All right, so I'm going to close that part up. Last thing we're going to do here, did everybody on the sign-in list? Oh. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. And there's typically 16 in this class. Anyway, they're teams. You're going to be in teams. So I'm going to show the teams. If your teammate is not here, we'll figure out who. I think there's 2 people missing, I think. We'll just reset. So whoever got orphaned, the missing people will come together as a team. So this is going to be, hang on one second, we don't need to deal with this.